As you started researching the story, what were the things that stood out to you or were surprising you?
Oh, it was really hard and complicating in that he's a male subject, and I think in that era they weren't very emotive, so it was a very internal subject. And I think if you're a track runner, you're very your whole process is almost internal. So I think that was some of the biggest challenges of how to maybe take some of that internal things that may be going on inside of a person and put it on the screen. I think that was probably one of the first overall challenges. And then certainly his early life, what could we show there? Because certainly the whole point of the story is, he goes to the Olympics, but is there something we could say or show before that? And then, it was just sort of scary if there was to be any archival material in his early years. So after sort of combing the earth, then that's when we found more of his competitions and bits and pieces all over the country. And then I also didn't realize how well known he was before the games. So that added almost a different challenge. Like, oh, he's already famous before the games. Okay, so that plot point, won't work. So it was just sort of unusual or unexpected challenges like that in terms of trying to tell the story.
What do you think that Jesse can tell us today about, we look at African Americans in sports, so many different stories, and the prominence of endorsements and all that has really changed, obviously, since Jesse Owens' time. What do you think that his story can speak to us today about that?
I think he had to maybe also perhaps invent that template of what does it mean post your quote-unquote expiration date. How to, now we know you must be a spokesman, you must get some endorsements, you must have some sort of foundation. That wasn't around at all. And I think he kind of maybe helped put that into a context, like this is something you could actually do and have a career doing. And I think some of the athletes today, maybe speaking out more. I mean, his time was he really, he couldn't as much as perhaps he wanted to, but even though I don't think he was a very confrontational person, but I think, society has changed a lot, and I think they can and maybe should be more vocal in terms of, the world around them. I mean, what little that Jesse Owens did just speaks volumes to this day. The kinship, if you will, with Les Long. I mean, just a handshake is just, has changed history. And some of those more profound gestures, maybe they're not done enough in today's sports. I mean, they have so much more latitude and gravitas to do things, and maybe that's the takeaway. Use them.
Since you mentioned Les Long, I wanted to ask you about that because it was a fascinating anecdote I'd never heard before. Do you know what became of him? How did he live through the war?
Yes, he was killed in the war. I couldn't concretely find like the next day, he had repercussions or anything like that. He did still kind of compete a couple years before the war, and then he was sent, closer to the front lines, if you will. But he was from a prominent family, but he was killed in the war. And then years later, Jesse Owens got in touch with his son and kind of kept up a relationship with the son.
Towards the end of the film, when he's being interviewed by Edwin R. Murrow, and he says we have the best system in the world. I mean, this is before the civil rights movement. Did he really believe that, or was that just what he was supposed to say because it's the Cold War and he was being sent abroad?
I think both. I think he did hold on to the American dream for him because from where he came from. Coming from Alabama to Cleveland, that was already huge. He survived that. And I think he believed in, if I work hard and, put my head to the grindstone, I will get results. Maybe I don't get all the results, but that's okay because, society is changing and it's going to be better for the next generation. So I think in some respects he really did believe that because, to him, he had a chance. He had a chance to go to Ohio State. Yes, it was segregated, but he got to go. He got a chance to be on the team. He got a chance to win the medals. Brundage was a, SOB, but he got to figure it out, and then, oh, he's a goodwill ambassador. So I think in some respects, yeah, I think he did.
Now, am I right that Leni Riefenstahl filmed the 1936 Olympics for the film Olympiad? And how did she deal with Owens? That's a part of the film I can't remember.
Yes, the footage. Yes, she did do a film and a number of films, and certainly was the regime's favorite filmmaker, and certainly invented, in an interesting way, she invented sort of sports filmmaking, sports coverage, all the different camera angles and pulleys and dollies and digging trenches and stuff and covering the games. But we weren't doing her story, so I didn't go into that. But she had this very interesting fascination. It seemed like to me, looking at the footage with Owens and the other black male athletes, just how the body and, just the retakes and, yeah, it was quite interesting.
Well, even later in her life.
And later in her life, she went off to Africa with her, younger partner, and, so she, yeah. So I think she, noticed them and idolized them and, has amazing camera angles on their bodies.
And did you use any of that footage, or did you purposely decide not to, or what was your relationship with footage?
No, intentionally and knowingly, we did not use her footage. I think that's a good way to put it. It's all contingent, what did she shoot or not shoot? And 75 years later, so many people have, using footage and claiming all types of ownership, if you will. But, I think her cinematography is so noted, and what she was doing was just such a style and very stylized that, for me, I was really trying to put the viewer in the moment, almost like a news type thing, almost like you're watching the games versus, semi-nude men with spears running through the sand, as she has in some of her films. So some of that we did use, but she did have, she did capture though so many of the events because she was there and had, 60 or so cameras. But yeah, it's a bit contentious, I guess, who really owns who, but the Olympics claim ownership. The German, what they call Bundesarchiv, the German archive, their footage is just such pristine condition, and they're very, very specific in trying how to use it and access it, and it's still on film. And we found kind of a private collector in Germany who had some of the, what I would call the spectator shots, the footage, and I really like that a lot. Just looking at it, that's when I realized, okay, we can really maybe do something with the events themselves. And staring at them, it was almost like some of the spectator people became characters. I would see, like, oh yeah, I like this couple, let's use them, and, let's tilt down here, or these people are too far away, or something. So that was a fun. And then one gentleman, he wrote a book like in the 1970s. I think he lives out west somewhere, and my associate producer, Stacy Holman, talked it into shipping his entire box of stuff to us, and that included all the posters, the Olympic Nazi posters, photographs, just all kinds of other memorabilia. So we, scanned like crazy, and then, preserved and put everything, shipped everything back to him. We also have stuff from, Sweden, and then just, I think I've never looked at so much Hitler footage in my life. Just goo gobs of Hitler, just sort of pare that down. That was probably a little overwhelming, having a lot of Hitler in the office.
So the previous film you produced with Stanley Nelson was Freedom Riders, and then this one Stanley produced for you. What's next for you?
Thanks. Yeah, it was great and challenging working with Stanley Nelson as a producer this time. I produced last time for him, so I certainly want to thank him for letting me, I guess, be hysterical for a year, since he has his visions and I have my vision, and I would just say, well, I'm directing, so like the posters. I like the posters. So we're now, I've been just doing a bunch of different films. One, I just got back from Africa and Mali, where they just had the coup, and I'm wrapping up hopefully a film on a African woman singer. And then I'm going to start on a project with Stanley on the Black Panther Party.